there's been a lot of talk around, China versus the US in sort of like a tech Cold War. We've seen it with the likes of AI, which we discussed a few weeks ago. We've seen it for a few years with, electric vehicles. The US has Tesla, China has BYD, which is getting huge. And could we see it with crypto? China's been notorious for banning crypto, but they may see this as, we have to compete with the US if we're going to actually compete on a global level. An interesting thing is the Chinese news networks actually covered this news of Trump announcing that he wants to build a strategic Bitcoin reserve or crypto reserve and wants to be a global crypto hub, right? And from my understanding, these networks in China are owned or controlled by the state, right? And so for them to actually cover this means that's been approved, and they want to sort of educate the public on these sorts of things, right? Because you need public support in order to move forward with a lot of these things, right? So I don't know. That's just my take, but I think we could see that progress somewhere. But who knows?
Yeah, it's a good shout.
I know you've got some thoughts on China versus US. Do you want to enlighten us with what you said before the show?
Not really. I just don't think there is anything going on.
I think you compared it to WWE. Or
we're not going to touch that. But I do think 100%. All right, once again, Daniel's giggling away at the corner. I do think once the US gets things up and running, it's just another product that they can export as a company. I think they're going to look at maybe their reserve and, the broader sort of impact that will have on the crypto economy within the US and the private sector specifically, all the different problems they'll look to solve for global entities. I don't know, this is sounding very just airy-fairy, but I feel like the ramifications or what a reserve that like this will kick off, be it Bitcoin or altcoins as well, it'll have, I think, a positive impact to the US trying to be the center of crypto in the world, if that's what they're actually trying to do.
Yeah.
That's, I guess, what I could say I'm looking forward to. And then all the other countries trying to follow suit. It's just going to be a bit of an interesting spin.
Yeah. So, I don't know, potentially one to look at is the Chinese coins, right? If this whole scenario plays out, what are the big Chinese coins? You got Neo, Filecoin, Conflux, VeChain.
Yeah.
Obviously, the US is pretty dominant when it comes to some of those bigger projects, like we mentioned before, XRP, Solana, Cardano. And I think that's probably because China has, got some pretty strict regulations around crypto. But, we might see those coins being favored.
Yeah.
China supports the whole crypto
I think what we might see out of this as well is what we talked about, I think maybe a couple episodes ago. We're past the point of, I feel, crypto needing infrastructure. That's all that's ever been, infrastructure.
Yeah.
Now there's kind of almost like an arms race between countries, the same way there is in the stock market to produce tech goods. This is just another sector of tech goods, essentially. There'll actually be an application race, maybe. That'd be pretty cool.
Yeah.
Where there's actually each country's trying to build new applications to attract revenue and grow their economy, right? It's just another way to form GDP. And AI is probably in the same space too, each country trying to work out how does AI fit into their broader strategy. But let's look at RWAs. I think that's probably the closest thing we're going to see to something being weaponized in terms of creating revenue for a country. Stable coins going through real world assets, we know Ondo Finance, we talked about that to death. Tokenizing bonds and even corporate bonds. Imagine every country doing that all of a sudden. Then you've got an actual protocol doing something, settling transactions everywhere. Payments is another space I think we've talked about, because everyone's labeled stablecoins as something that we know what it is. This is how we're going to handle it. That's as clear as legislation's gotten so far, particularly in Europe, and now the US is likely going to follow. Yep. So I think that's the exciting space for me.
Yeah, exactly. No, I think you mentioned it there, that some of the narratives that are going to favor the best on the back of this, politicalization of crypto are probably RWAs, AI, stablecoins. You mentioned it. So just to sort of tie off that segment, if the US is Hulk Hogan, what does that make China?
Oh my God.
I need an answer.
Going too far back. I think it's... well, yeah. No, let's not do this.
Randy Orton?
Well, The Rock and Steve Austin, weren't they against each other and they fought together for a bit? I reckon it's a bit like that.
Okay, nice. There you go. You don't get these sort of insights anywhere else.
SummerSlam up in here.